Remember how determined your parents were to give you the gift of knowledge? Today, you have a big advantage with the Apple II GS. Apple II computers are found in more schools than any other computer. You can give your kids the universe.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Player One Start. Today we have kind of a special project I'm going to work on. So all this stuff came about when I was sitting on my couch one night and I received a text from a friend. He sent me these pictures you see popping up over in the corner. Now immediately I was intrigued. These just kept coming in one after the other with no explanation about what was supposed to be happening. Eventually there came a question. I'm at my grandma's house, they're going to get rid of this stuff. Do you want it? That took me about a second to think, and I was like, yeah. So the only caveat was I actually had to go over to his grandma's place with him and grab the stuff, which I'm more than happy to do. So let's go ahead and take a look at that process.
First off, I'm going to say that I actually like this basement the way it's laid out. You can definitely tell that someone old lived here, as they have a whole bunch of cigar boxes holding a bunch of tools. This kind of reminded me a little bit of going to my own grandma's house when I was a kid. But anyway, past the boxes of all these parts here, I found the computer monitor and the printer. But don't worry, just moments earlier I had already boxed up a lot of the stuff that needed to be packaged up before they were brought up the stairs. There's actually a lot more stuff in here than I thought there was, and I am excited to be able to get to go through this stuff and get it all put back together and see if this system actually works. And yes, I was able to verify that this is an Apple II GS system. Despite the level of dust buildup, everything seems to be in pretty good shape, although it's a lot more dirty than the last time I remember seeing these things. But now the difficult task of getting all this stuff brought up the stairs and back to my house so I can go ahead and clean them up and test out to see if these work.
So I don't know if I was blinded by the pure joy I was feeling by the fact that I was actually going to get a vintage Apple system. Didn't know what kind from the pictures, but I assumed it was something other than just the regular Apple II. I thought maybe a 2E. But it turns out that there's a lot of stuff in this lot. I had no idea that it entailed this much hardware. So let's go ahead and unpack these pieces of everything that I got. I'm going to do it one at a time, clean it up, and then we'll get it assembled together. So let's go ahead and get started with that.
For as bulky as this computer is, it's actually surprisingly light. At this moment, I'm not quite sure why it's so tall, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it's due to the fact that the Apple II supported a lot of expansion cards, and those would stick up from the motherboard. And except for the front here, as I'm looking at the case, I actually am very impressed that this thing is still in pretty good condition. There's no deep gashes, nothing I can't just wipe off with some benign cleaning product. My biggest concern is if something would have leaked through the top of the case and onto the motherboard, or perhaps a lot of dust got in there. We won't know until we get this cleaned up so I can get it taken apart. But before I do that, let's go ahead and spin this around and get a look at the back. Somebody's obviously with labels over the expansion cards here. Headphone jack, modem, printer, serial, floppy disk, display, composite display. Interesting. Bet you that's for the monochrome display. We might try both. Lock, and then power. And power switch, still responsive. I've actually never attempted to get into one of these. Let's go ahead and do some base cleaning first. Bottom's pretty clear, very clean. That's what the bottom looks like. To blur out that serial number possibly. Feet are intact. Alright, so I see some snaps down here. You know what? We may not need any tools to open this up, so I'm going to do some research. I'm going to do some research to figure out what it takes to get this open, because I don't see any screws. It looks like there's just these snaps on the bottom, but I don't know. There we go, there's one. There's 2. I felt that go. About this 3rd one here. There we go. Oh. There's a shield. Oh yeah, and the back has 2 tabs. And then we're in. That's pretty easy. The inside of this is clean, no rust at all. I'm happy about that. I'm not going to do too much disassembly. That's in good and tight. That's got to be the... Oh, that's RAM. Let's take a closer look at this board. Alright, so yeah, as I suspected, the height of the case seems to only accommodate the extra expansion cards and the power supply. To tell you the truth, this may just seem a lot taller because there's no keyboard on the front that most Apple IIs would have had before this, but maybe it won't seem as tall once I get everything put together. As I noted just a little bit ago, there already is a card in one of these slots, and this appears to be a RAM expansion card. If I had to guess, this is probably providing the system with an additional 512 kilobytes, bringing the system to about 768K or 1 megabyte. While looking at the board, I was curious as to what this chip is, and it appears to be just a regular logic IC. But what's nice about this board is that everything is labeled. Just above that is the CPU, along with what appears to be the boot ROM. Notice that copyright by Microsoft 1977, that was an integral part of every Apple II. I believe that contains the original AppleSoft BASIC. While looking at this motherboard as a whole, I will say that I do miss Apple's toolless approach into their products to make them more serviceable. You definitely don't see stuff like this anymore. Everything in here is very modular, it can be very easily replaced if I need to, but for now I'm going to go ahead and put this back together as I want to see if it works before I go any further. Alright, now that I clean the plastics, time for this to be back on. So there's the LED that lights this up. Yeah, that can be snapped in. This didn't even need to come off. It's only those 2 tabs in the back. Okay. And I did some rinsing out of this thing, so it should just go like that and then snap down. Why can't Apple products be like this to begin with? Easy to disassemble, easy to fix and work on. Oh my gosh. This object is a bit heavier. Let's see how we do here. Came with the monitor. And the fact that this came with the monitor is great. This is the Apple RGB color monitor that was specifically sold with the Apple IIgs. This monitor has a 12-inch screen and is capable of showing red, green, and blue video colors at a resolution of about 640 by 200 pixels on a non-interlace mode or 640 by 400 in interlace mode. Taking a look at the top of the monitor, though, you can tell this monitor definitely needs a little tender loving care, especially when you get a look at the screen and you can see all the dirt that is built up on the front of it. Alright, so these 2 things are cleaned, but there's more that came in the lot, and there's a lot more cleaning to do. So let's go ahead and get the rest out so we can actually boot this machine up and see what it does. So I ended up getting 2 of the 3.5-inch floppy drives, and 1 of these dual bay 5.25-inch floppy drives, which actually still had a game in it. Interesting, I'll have to see if I can boot to this later. Lastly, I saved the best for last. How are we going to control this thing? With the mouse and the keyboard.
Alright, so I have everything cleaned up, and my hands still feel a bit grimy. I had to actually wash my hands several times after this, get all the chemicals and the dust that had built up and the gunk off of underneath my fingernails. It was just, everything was just disgusting from sitting in the basement from that long. But everything is really encouraging. All this stuff is actually pretty clean on the inside. Some things I didn't do on camera was I actually took apart that dual drive to clean the disk heads and everything just seems to be working. The 3.5-inch floppy drives also have disks in them as well, so I'm going to have to see what's on those when I try to boot this machine. Let's go ahead and get everything hooked up and give this machine a thorough test. I gotta tell you, I'm getting this hooked up, and these things back here have been incredibly helpful, actually. I said an engineer should have designed this, but obviously C2 goes into C2 like that. And although his labels fell off of a thing, I'm assuming this can be plugged into whatever up here. This is already labeled. So we have computer right there. There we go. So this should be the most basic configuration I need for the computer to boot. I'm getting kind of nervous because we're getting to the point where I can at least power on the computer and see if I can do anything. Alright folks, here it is, moment of truth. Master on. Light comes on for that. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't connect it to the monitor. Whoops. Let's try that again. Again, incredibly helpful because M1, I'm assuming, stands for monitor. Alright, let's try this again, shall we? Oh, look at that. Check startup device. So yeah, that means we have to plug in one of these disk drives. I'm going to guess it's the Duo with that thing over there. So, woohoo! It works. It's alive. Let's try this again.
Alright, now this is looking a lot better. I was able to successfully boot to my Apple Systems utility disk, and it turns out that is what was in the 3.5-inch floppy drive, along with the data disk for saving things. However, since there was nothing really worthy of note to show in there, I decided to go ahead and exit out to the basic prompt so I can type in a little program. I usually end up doing a Hello World program, followed by one that actually includes a variable. It is a bit strange for me to see this monochrome style display in blue and white, as I'm used to seeing it in green and black. But overall, in comparison to the Apple IIc, I actually find typing on this keyboard to be a much more enjoyable experience. For some reason, I think the Apple IIc, either the keys don't press in as much, or they're too scrunched together. I don't know what it is, but I don't have as much fun typing on that keyboard as I do on this one.
So that is fantastic. This machine works great, and I am very ecstatic. Let's go ahead and try out some of the games that I have on hand for my Apple IIc.
One thing I noticed with some of the earlier Apple II titles is that they run a little fast. It's almost like they're running at double speed. I'll have to take a look and see if the processor on here can be adjusted, but in this game it didn't really seem to make much of a difference, as it is more of a strategy game. I do remember spending hours playing Lemonade Stand back in the day. Basically, in this game, you're a kid who's running a lemonade stand, and your goal is just keep making money and don't lose money. And it kind of teaches the kids the basics of business, I guess. Now here's a game I remember playing in school a lot. This is Number Munchers. But again, I'm not used to seeing it on a color display, so I also decided to hook up the monochrome display to see what it looks like between the two different monitors. This would have been the epitome of a high-tech setup back in the day, having multiple monitors running from the same computer, even though they're both showing the same thing. I like that this is something that the system is already providing, and hence doesn't require a lot of extra processing power to actually do this. The monochrome display is the one I have off of my Apple IIc. It just plugs in with that composite display port, and I was off and running. Believe it or not, back in the day, this is how I learned my multiples of numbers, as well as primes.
So right now with the tools that I have available, what else can I do with this machine? Well, remember it actually came with that Apple image writer? Let's go ahead and test print something and see if that thing still works. I imagine that thing's been sitting in a basement for near 20 years, so I'm not quite sure if the ink ribbon is going to work or not. Let's go ahead and try.
I ended up taking a can of compressed air to blow out all the dust, and then I also went through and cleaned up some of the rollers, but I didn't do too much else. Everything else seems to be loose in here and working, so let's go ahead and try it right now to make sure I don't break anything first. Yeah, I'll print from the beginning. I think it's called an image writer. How many copies? Just one. Printer's running, I can use those keys. Let's see what happens. Ooh, it got stuck. Well, the ink still works, but it got stuck halfway through, so it overwrote a couple of them. Whoops. So I did a few more things to lubricate the parts that are moving in there, and then I had to retype up a new letter because I forgot to save the old one. So I'm going to try printing this one and see what happens.
I am shocked that that actually printed something. Not only that, but after the first run through, I was able to print successfully each time, and it's legible. You can print in light or dark, it doesn't matter. You can still see what's on the paper, and I am really shocked that this is still working after all of that time. So I guess it just goes to show that if you store your electronics correctly, and you take care of it when you own them, it's going to keep working at least 20 years after it's sitting in a box in the basement. So right now, that appears to be all I can do with this machine. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to test the Apple IIgs mode, which runs a graphical user interface that was specifically designed to look like the Mac OS, but run on the 2GS. So the person who gave me this stuff told me that when they start clearing out the basement more, they'll find the box of games and other software that goes with this computer, and they're supposed to let me know. So unfortunately, that may have to wait until another video.
However, I may not have to wait until I receive those software disks to test out the 2GS features. In my previous video where I took a look at the Apple IIc, I actually replaced the floppy disk drive in that computer with a floppy disk drive emulator. And this card actually has a lot of unique features, and one of them can actually emulate an Apple SmartPort card. So in the next video, I'm going to attempt to use this device to boot the Apple IIgs into the 2GS OS mode.
I am still very much looking forward to the original owners finding the rest of the disks and software that went with this computer so I can run everything off of the original hardware. But for now, this will make do. And before I forget, I really do want to thank the family members and my friend who decided to donate this machine to me so I can show it to you guys on the channel, and I can give this machine a home for the near future. That said, that is actually going to wrap it up for this video. Remember, if you like what you see, please click that like button. Also, don't forget to click on that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and the bell icon to be notified when I make future posts. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned because I have more content coming, and I will see you all in the next one.
If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Also, if you enjoy the content of this channel, please remember to click on this subscribe button. Again, I want to thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.